Hey guys, it's your host, Konstantin Polyakov, and we're here back in the studio for yet another episode of PRsonalities. Today we have a very special guest. We have somebody who has been on our show more than once, actually twice. And today we're bringing him back for a third time. And the one other reason why it's so very special is he was the very, very first guest that we had on a show 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
Guys, without much further ado, please welcome Michael Jagdeo. Michael,
that's what I imagine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming back once more. We have covered many different things in the past, and today we're going to do a bit of a recap.
Okay.
For those of you who do not know Michael from the previous episodes, I like to describe him as a entrepreneur by morning, headhunter by lunch, and a musician by supper.
Yeah, it's actually in reverse now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The kids are getting taught in the morning. Headhunting is happening about 5, and entrepreneurship is around 11:30.
Got it.
Got
it. Well, the first time we had Michael on the show, we talked about headhunting. This is where you came from. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you've been up to for the past couple of years with that business?
Sure.
Where it's taken you? I know there's been a lot of different things you've been up to. We'll be talking about a lot of them today.
Yeah.
But the first one is headhunting.
So headhunting, for those of in the audience who might not know, headhunting is recruiting executives. So 15 years ago, I was at U of T and I ran out of money for school, so I got a job as a recruiter, which is like a junior headhunter, right? And it was for actuaries, financial engineers, for insurance companies. They're the mathematicians who come up with the insurance rates.
Right on.
Right? So I was placing them, PwC, Allianz, big insurance companies, blah, 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 and consulting companies. And a year later, I got a job in IT. So imagine 15, 20 years later, recruiting all of this time. I had a stint in finance, and then 8 years ago I started really focusing on headhunting, which is the boutique side of recruiting. Not recruiting 500 of one person, but you need a chief counsel, you need a co-founder, you need a chief technical officer. That's what headhunting has evolved into today. So now I'm working with startups, and a startup grows by people, right? You have one founder, and then you have two.
That's right.
Right? And this second founder makes or breaks the startup. So that's what headhunting is now, is connecting people to handle challenges that they couldn't handle on their own. So for example, if you're an energy company and you want to penetrate a market, what do you do now?
Where do you start?
Where do you start?
You need the people.
You need a person.
Oh, a person.
Right? Because it really just starts with a person. And then to the person you get the people.
That's right.
Right? And so it's, well, who is that person? If you want to enter in this market, who's the first person you talk to? Because if you talk to the wrong person, you could lose millions of billions of dollars trying to venture into a new market, and you're just going to get, fleeced. Just ask any company who tried to expand into China. Not knowing the right people on the ground will cost you billions of dollars.
That's actually very true. Most businesses, if you don't have somebody there that you can trust them, how can you build a business?
And how do you know who to trust?
And in today's 2020 economy, you have businesses all over the world, and that's kind of how you grow.
Right?
You outsource certain things, and you work certain things in your own country, and you do certain things a certain way. Try to build and grow as much as you can.
Yeah, it's almost like the whole economy is getting kind of fragmented, right? So you are ultra specialized in what you do. But if anyone needs what you do, they come to you and you only.
That's right.
But if you need the legal help, you're now fragmenting off to someone else. And so it's just an exciting time where if you're a startup who wants to enter a huge market, who do you talk to first? If you talk to the right person, and that person calls their best friend, imagine you wanted to train with GSP.
Okay.
Right? How would you get to train with GSP?
I would go to Montreal.
Or you would get introduced to Faraz Zahabi.
Right on.
Right? Or John Danaher.
The coach.
Right? But if you could get an introduction to Faraz or John Danaher, what would that be worth to you?
You would very likely meet GSP.
And what would you learn from Faraz Zahabi and John Danaher in the process? You'd learn how to tear someone's knee off.
If that's the goal.
If that's the goal.
That's the ultimate goal.
Right? But you have those on the board, right?
On.
So it's so interesting that in a time where data is gold, information is gold, and I mean, we have the internet, and people think, okay, information is democratized. Is it?
Well, not everywhere. And even where it is it?
Right? Because I found as a headhunter that when I'm speaking to people who are 10 times more intelligent about what they are, about their specialty than me.
Right on.
Like if I was headhunting you, right? You know infinitely more than I'll ever know about mortgages and sales in this financial space. But that advice is priceless. Priceless if you're trying to enter into a new market.
Right on.
And what if you want to, I don't know, penetrate a new country? Where do you start?
Well, you probably would look for a blueprint elsewhere and try to work with those people.
Or you start with the person on the ground.
That's right.
Who has all of the invisible data that could never be captured in a blog post.
Connections, leverage.
Real-time information.
Reputation.
Right? Because it's like things are happening on such a large scale because of the digitization of business that you could be building a business in the wrong direction for 3 years and think you're in the right direction. And all of a sudden, Starlink just goes, forget about your internet business, right? And Tesla goes, forget about your new vehicle, right? And PayPal goes, right? That's what's happening today. I saw Tesla's worth more than GM and Ford.
Well, yeah, they're outselling everybody right now in North America.
Tesla is worth more than GM or Ford. Now that's just a reality that we woke up to today.
Took time.
It took at least 10 to 15 years.
Took time and brilliant minds and some very special people.
And who's to say he didn't get lucky, whereas a bunch of other just as equally talented people just had the wrong person, right? The wrong this, the wrong that.
Well, I don't think Musk was the first to introduce electric vehicles. He was the first one to really take it.
Had it.
Well, everybody had tried something, but Musk is the one who really kind of,
Well, it was the regulations in California that forced everyone to return their GM electric vehicle.
Oh.
They had to return the vehicle. Imagine you bought a electric car. It's working beautiful, right? They forced you, they repossessed the first electric car that people loved. Yeah, I forget what it was called. They did a documentary on it.
Oh, God.
So this has happened before. It's the political, legal, and regulatory environment is like the fulcrum upon which emerging markets rise and fall.
Right on.
Right? And so, I mean, we saw that in Musk, right? He got here, why? How? What obstacle? 2 years ago, what was the obstacle? The Security Exchange Commission on that Dubai deal. Remember? $420 a share, I have an offer.
To be honest with you, I wasn't following that part.
Okay. There was a time where people were worried about the financial stability of Tesla. They still are.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah.
So Elon Musk tweeted out that the Saudis had $420 a share to offer them, to provide them the runway to complete their vision. And the SEC said, hey, that's a violation. And they had to go to court. I think he paid $20 million.
Jesus.
Yeah, $10 million to settle. To use his Twitter. And there's this whole thing is, should Elon Musk be using Twitter and all this kind of stuff, right? So, but he was able, somehow, some way, to integrate his electric strategy with his political, legal, and regulatory strategy. Like, for example, I think there's this a state in Michigan, a state in the U.S. that has just agreed to allow Tesla to do direct-to-consumer sales without a dealer. Do you know how much political will that takes?
I can imagine. I don't think dealers are very happy.
So you can imagine how, like, it's not about the electric car. Look, it's almost like getting from here to another galaxy is tougher than doing this political, legal, and regulatory negotiation. Because what happens if there's a new government that comes into play? Now you have to start again? And now you're starting again every 8 years? Man.
Takes leverage, right? These types of things, these types of moves take a lot of leverage.
And that's what I've learned over the past 2 years is like, okay, sure you have a startup, and I'm sure you might have the cure to cancer.
Yeah.
Well, how many people have had the cure to cancer before? You might not know. I might not know. And that is true for any industry.
Right.
Because anyone who wants to be disruptive is going to quickly find out that there are people who don't want to be disrupted.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
I mean, the gatekeepers are there, they're watching, and they're just...
And disruptors are the new gatekeepers. So I'm sure they're going to understand. Right? Ask any Bitcoin maximalist,
Right.
you know, which is the best cryptocurrency.
Well, actually, that leads us into a whole other part of it. So when you first came on the show, we talked about headhunting.
Yeah.
And this whole topic of picking the right people for the right businesses. The second time you came, we're talking about crypto into the billions.
Right.
Guys, if you have not watched that episode, that was a panel that we had with Michael and our other friend Brad from Numo, and we were talking about a very, very precarious time in the crypto industry when it just rose up to the very top and it just went crashing down the hill shortly after. And we had that panel right around that time. So a lot of things have changed. And you had that really nifty graph that you put out that seemed to be getting a lot of attention because you were comparing the different aspects of the cryptocurrencies that were emerging at the time and the different levers that they had.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit what's happened with that, because that's a whole other broad topic.
When talking about this stuff, it's hard to know where to start.
Right? Let's start with where we started. The graph.
So with the graph, if you ask a digital currency expert, what is the one challenge everyone's trying to solve? They will call it the trilemma. And it's a triangle. And the triangle stands for speed of money flow, scalability of money flow, and security of money flow. All of the cryptocurrencies in the world are challenged with making trade-offs. Thomas Sowell said there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And it was a jab at all the Democrats saying, hey, I'll just give you all the money in the world. Oh, really? You don't think there are any trade-offs to this scenario of just infinitely printing money, right? So it was kind of a jab, a Republican jab at Democrats saying we can spend our way into utopia, right? There are no solutions, only trade-offs. Same thing in blockchain, right? How do we achieve billions of transactions between startups and corporations? How do we achieve it scalably?
And not lose all the data.
And not lose all the data, right? Peter Schiff, a very prominent economist, just lost his Bitcoin because he lost his password or his seed phrase or something like that, right? And he's the a major guy that is advising people on gold. So, but it highlights a real issue. In cryptocurrency, we leave the responsibility of managing the security with the end user. Is that a good idea? Is it a good idea to let somebody's 12-word passphrase have the key to their mortgage?
Well, I mean, all it takes is you forgetting it.
And he forgot it.
Or wait for it.
Yeah?
Not forgetting it, dying, and forgetting to put it in the will. Welcome to 2020.
So a lot of people in cryptocurrency and blockchain are waking up to the reality that bankers have lived for all of their lives, right? Because everybody thinks, oh, I have this idea, but then they don't realize, oh.
There's that as well.
This is a little more complicated than we thought, right? And so that chart showed the different decisions they were making. We're going to give up scalability for speed. We're going to give up speed for security and scalability. They're just picking out which angle do we want, which line do we want to kind of emphasize. So Bitcoin today, BTC, most people call it. There are different flavors of Bitcoin. There's people get upset at me for saying this because they only think BTC. This is where
that matters.
This is where the details come in, right? But imagine there's different flavors of Bitcoin, but the most dominant one is called BTC, right? And although it's not necessarily scalable yet, what's interesting is that it might not need to be scalable to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
So, 2 years later, 3 years later, looking back on that document, yes, we can judge each cryptocurrency by how they make their trade-off between security, speed, and scalability. But what if adoption solved for a problem that addressed more than this? So for example, if everyone's using Bitcoin, for example, maybe people don't care if it scales.
Maybe it's just a measure of value.
Maybe it's just adoption at that point, because adoption is value. Adoption is the ultimate.
So it's the one angle everybody forgot about.
Adopt, right? You might not like WhatsApp, but if WhatsApp decides to process WhatsApp TC or WhatsApp blockchain currency, you think people won't transact? There's a lot of people.
WhatsApp is probably one of the most common apps, right? So you introduce some other token into it, and all of a sudden people are trading in something.
They'll use WhatsApp coin all day long. What? Right? So it's like adoption, and a lot of people kind of realize this in the beginning, is adoption is going to determine what people use more than anything else. So for example, Twitter realized this, and he has Cash App, right? Stripe realized this and tried to create the payment solution with the least amount of code, right? So it's just looking back on all of these solutions, we're finding that the market itself is finding solutions for these currencies. For example, with Ethereum, people aren't necessarily using Ethereum as a currency. They're using Ethereum more to track information. And who needs to track information? The largest supply chain manufacturers in the world. Nobody cares about, right? Nobody really cares about it, but they care about it.
Well, everybody cares about knowing where the data is and how it's being stored and what's happening with it.
So, whereas Bitcoin might find value if there's a recession, because, how did the Mongols trap their enemy? You give them an opening.
And they go into it.
And they close it. Same thing in jiu-jitsu. Right? You give them your arm, they reach for it, and then you execute.
It's called bait.
Baiting, right? So, again, it's not financial advice, but what happens if you can't? What happens if the 10-year return on a bond is negative? And what happens if there's a crash in the equities markets?
So looking for alternatives.
And if they can find a non-correlated asset?
Well, that's it.
Do they care what it's called?
It
could be called Polyakov coin, Polyakov coin, or Constantine coin, or BJJ coin. If it's going up, when people are going down, right?
Classic tulip example.
Huh?
Tulip, yeah.
Right? And so
it's all about what people adopt as value, and what people adopt as a currency.
And it's so weird because we live in a world where even adoption is liquid.
Well, 1 minute. I think this is something that we're forgetting to mention. Why is this so very important? Because ultimately, there's more to it than just a currency. Because we talked a little bit earlier about tokenization of natural resources. We talked about governance, and I would like for you to expand on all that.
Yeah.
But let's start with, we talked a little bit about a company called Ecofolio.
Yeah.
So I want to start with that. We're going to go through the 4 things that Michael and I wanted to bring up today. So, and one of them is naturalization of natural resources.
So, to end off, I had that whole chart thinking, this is how I'm going to judge these currencies. Not knowing that the market sometimes has its own problems that it's looking to solve. So, for example, we're in a climate crisis. Why are we in a climate crisis? It could be that we don't have we as a planet don't have a way to value natural resources.
That's right.
So what if a company used blockchain to monetize a forest? So imagine this is forest somewhere in the middle of nowhere, Timbuktu. Nobody cares about it. But the people at Timbuktu, they want to generate economic activity. They want to invite people to invest. Might they chop up the forest into little parcels of land and sell it on the open market?
Well, I think the internet problem would be who owns the title of that forest.
And that's where regulation, political, legal, and regulatory environment. Remember, the political, legal, and regulatory environment is the fulcrum upon which startups live and die.
That's right.
And so many of the savvy people in the blockchain space have started working with the regulators to understand what might be kosher for them.
Right on.
And so, hey, if we want to do this, we know we have a common problem, which is climate change and valuing our natural resources, preventing people from just buying them and chopping it down. How might we address this? Government and entrepreneur. Well, if you work with them for enough time and they trust you and you have the right people, right, then you can do something like Ecofolio, which is starting with a very small piece of land and chopping up into little packages and selling those packages off.
So that's the part of it that has to do with natural resources. So again, this is a very interesting direction that we could not may have.
I would have never imagined.
May have not seen 5 years ago.
I think somebody said there's $146 trillion of natural resources
to be tokenized.
What? That's just a new asset class in the trillions. It's like an asteroid just landed over here. Now we can start mining it, right? But what if mining it, tokenizing it, making it buyable was the way we saved it? Because might people in Australia spend money to protect the forest they own? Right? When it's burning to the ground.
Because it has value to them.
Because it's that value to them. And what if you could put that value into the people's ownership? But you can imagine, that's the most disruptive idea on the planet. What? You're going to tokenize Dairy Road? Good luck. Good luck. Good luck for all of the reasons in the world, right? Good luck. And so there are companies that are coming out now. So imagine 20 years ago, Uber is the ultimate political, legal, regulatory disruptor. We're not going to talk to anyone. We're going to operate. Good luck. Today, it's not necessarily the case. People are still trying it, but other people are actually getting a little further ahead by finding a middle ground between being essentially an anarchist and a centralist.
Using leverage again.
And just understanding that there might be a path to victory instead of just a victory moment.
Right on.
Right? And so, and nobody knows. It could be what was Tesla's path to victory? You could do a whole documentary on the political, legal, and regulatory story of Tesla.
Oh, I bet.
Right? And you could do a whole story on how their competitors who failed misstepped or maybe couldn't afford their legal bills.
Oh, that's that should be almost like a whole course in university on just how these companies emerged, Amazon, Tesla, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, because
they're shaping the economy day by day.
And that's really what headhunting has really turned into for me. 15 years ago, it's helping you find a job.
That's right.
Today, I have a founder with a disruptive patent, idea, whatever, and I'm looking to get to market. I'm looking to help. Well, okay, you need to pitch this person. You need to pitch that person. You need to spend 1 year getting your act together, and then you can pitch this one person. So that's what headhunting has turned into me. Unicornlaunching.com.
Right on.
It's helping unicorns get to market. How? Through the right people. Knowing that everyone has access to virtually the internet. So that's solved. You're not going to find necessarily a competitive advantage doing research on the internet. Right?
Oh, it's all there.
It's all there, right? And anyone with an electricity and a phone can look up a PDF, look up a biology textbook. And so how do you get the competitive advantage? It's by talking to the people who are actually the decision makers.
That's right.
But how do you meet a John Danaher? How do you meet a Faraz Zahabi? How do you meet that GSP? Well, it starts with those metals, right? So it starts with a startup doing that. Right, you're like a startup.
Getting a little bit ahead.
Yeah, you're kind of like a startup jiu-jitsu guy, right?
Just doing little scores on a tree.
Yeah, and they talk about fail often in the beginning, right? How many times you get tapped the first time?
You lose
right?
thousands of times.
Right? In fact, I remember jiu-jitsu the first time, my defense was this. Right? Just trying to keep this person who was heavier and longer and stronger than me from moving. Like, actually keeping him on top of me was like my last line of defense.
It's hard.
It's
a lot harder than you think.
But it's from there led to that. And now you're actually, look, it's no stretch of the imagination that when you do well at the next Pan Ams, somebody's going to ask you to train with them. And you're going to have to turn them down. Or you're going to have to make a very tough decision. Right?
Are they trying to scout me?
Oh, can you imagine if I was a headhunter scouting
Am I being
you
headhunted?
for Faraz Zahabi and John Danaher? Hey, Faraz and John Danaher, I am available for a retainer. You need
And a
this guy
handshake.
in your team.
And a handshake.
Yeah, yeah. A golden handshake, they call it in my world.
So listen, so this is
So
all
that's Ecofolio. How might we save the planet? Well, maybe if we monetize the forests, people would be less likely to cut them down because someone's willing to do more than hug the tree in defense. Someone might get the lawyer,
right on.
right? And imagine if you could have lawyers with an economic incentive to protect a rainforest. That's what we're building with blockchain now. Who would have ever thought that you could do that?
It's not just currency anymore. So the last
It's not
few
just
years,
currency. They're
changed.
digitized. They're calling this Nature 3.0. That's what they're calling it. Nature 3.0. Applying nature and distributed computing on top of each other with a currency. So we know the forest is there. We know that you can own this part, and this part is worth this much.
That's
But now it's infinitely transactable.
well, it all comes down to just simple concepts of title ownership, right? Ultimately,
That's exactly
but
it.
it evolved so much now that it's now no longer just change of title. Now it's just.
Well, let me ask you, who has title to a forest in Canada?
Well, I'm going to guess the crown.
Right? Might the crown decide, hey, there might be a portion of a small island in the middle of nowhere that we're willing to have people buy?
Oh, absolutely.
They might.
Sure.
They might. Maybe they might tokenize Greenland.
Well, actually, I think they do incentivize people purchasing land and essentially adopting land, wetlands, right? Like places you
Highways.
can't build, right? So things are being essentially sponsored by people willing to participate in philanthropy of a sort.
So zooming way out, we now have currency 3.0 and we have nature 3.0. What are the business models in between that people are going to build? We're just in the beginning of that.
That's right.
Like, have you heard of decentralized autonomous organizations?
Well, the organizations we've been talking for a while, but in terms of implementation,
So, there's something called a DAO. So we've talked about currency 3.0. Web 3.0 is distributed computing, having
That's right.
computers everywhere. That's Web 3.0, right? The fourth industrial revolution is computers everywhere, software everywhere, currency everywhere. What about governance 3.0? This is the scary part. When I saw what people were able to do with not just decentralized money, but decentralized governance,
decision making.
decentralized decision making with money. So, how do you get, the challenge is, how do you get a bunch of people to agree on which projects to fund?
You got to vote.
But oftentimes these people vote and they vote against each other and there's infighting and there's proposal vetting and all that process. And so how long does it take for someone to get 20 grand in our economy if they have a great startup idea?
That could be forever, really. It depends on the idea.
But you're right, it could be forever, right? If you don't know how to pitch, maybe you have an accent and nobody's listening to, right?
Fair enough.
An accent can take, look, an accent will cost you a deal with the wrong person,
Yeah.
right? We know that. We know that in recruiting, we know that in pitching. So, with a decentralized autonomous organization, how do we, again, climate change, how do we take money, I'm going to zoom way out, so Adam Smith said that capital, money, is a wagon way through the air, right? That's the purpose of money. If you're keeping it in your pocket, it's dead.
That's right.
When capital is used, it's a wagon way through the air to transform an economy. The challenge is allocating and deploying capital usefully is a hard problem to solve.
This has been pretty much the epitome of government for the past 2,000 years.
But it's the epitome of humanity, right?
Decision making at a large scale.
If we know at 5,000 years everyone has the same problem, it's not government, it's us. It's us as humanity not being able to figure out ourselves.
That's right.
As amazing as we are. So, climate change, big issues that we need to find funding for, startups that we want to fund. How do we get them funded? Like you said, it could take them 3 months, they could never get the funding. And what happens? How many startups today you think will just never get the funding they need, even though they have a great idea?
99%.
Wow. Even if it was 50%, it's an economic tragedy, right?
Well, we just some startups we just never hear it because they die so early.
It's an economic tragedy. The fact that we can't have capital fly through the air, right? Adam Smith. So, what if you could create a decentralized, with no leader or very few leaders, organization that speeds up investment times from 90 days to 72 hours?
Instant almost.
It's almost, it might as well be instant.
Okay, I mean at that point, I think you're just putting the time frame in just so you can give people enough time to respond.
To respond. That's what a decentralized or autonomous organization, or DAO, is. The most successful decentralized autonomous organization experiment to date is called Moloch DAO. They call him Moloch because Moloch is the god of coordination failure.
All right.
it's like a biblical term, I think. It's you have this large monster, then the right arm doesn't know what the left arm is doing, but it has all of these resources, right? And they called it Moloch, right? It's like this monster. It's scary, actually. They even call they call it like eater of children.
Oh God.
But it's the idea that we have all of these resources, yet we can't feed someone. It's almost like it's the tragedy of coordination challenges, right? How do we solve it? Moloch DAO. So Ethereum, which is the number 2 cryptocurrency in the world, wanted to go from 1.0 to 2.0. I'm not going to go into details of what that means, but imagine they needed a bunch of money to spend a bunch of money on developers so that those developers could use that money as food, write code, and create a new platform for the world to do nature 3.0, currency 3.0,
right,
governance 3.0, blah, blah, blah. But there's a gap between 1.0 and 2.0, and that gap is represented by time and money. Right? Capital is a wagon way through the air, but that wagon stops, right? Because of coordination challenges. Getting this person to review the document, and this person to agree, and this person doesn't like it. What Moloch did is it took Vitalik Buterin, who is the head of Ethereum. He's the inventor of Ethereum. Mm-hmm. It took Consensus, which is I think the most famous company for building projects on top of Ethereum. Mm-hmm. And it took the Ethereum Foundation. And each of them put in, I think, 1,000 Ethereum. 1,000 ETH. And they attracted a bunch of other people to put the money in too. So now there is a decentralized, well, not decentralized yet, but slowly decentralized autonomous organization where people can pitch projects and get funding 20 to 60 grand in maybe 72 hours or less. That's what we have today. Why'd they create it? Because Ethereum itself was failing at funding the projects. They're like, we're stuck at 1.0. Why? Because these guys can't agree. Well, how do we get them on the same board? Well, we create a decentralized autonomous organization, and we allow them to have their money there on one condition only. You can pull your money whenever you want. You can pull your money
How does that work?
whenever you want.
How does
if
that
you
work?
don't like the way the decentralized autonomous organization is making its decisions,
Pull out funding.
screw your organization. I'm going to start my own.
Okay.
And it keeps everyone honest.
Huh.
Now, there are other economic incentives, but they built it simply so to reduce the attack surface for security reasons. But imagine an organization figured out how to provide capital funding in the tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands with essentially very few leaders.
But how can an organization not fail if it has such a innate pitfall about it?
And because you're talking about being able to remove their money.
Remove capital.
It's called a rage quit.
Okay.
You see, what the weird thing about this is that rage quit as a mechanism for Moloch it can be a feature or a bug. You ever hear that phrase?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a feature or a bug? Does it hurt or help the product? It turns out the ability to pull out your money is the reason you keep it there. Right? How do you get everyone to keep their money in? Usually mutual funds are like, keep it over 10 years, we're going to take your money if you take it out, give me 30%, all that stuff. And they're like, take it whenever you want. But it's your reputation on the line.
Very interesting.
They put your reputation.
This is very surreal. So there's a lot of things happening in the world with crypto.
It's very surreal.
We talked about Nature 2.0. We talked about governance. Nature 3.0, governance 3.0.
Nature 3.0. The fourth industrial revolution.
No, we haven't talked about though.
Yeah.
I think that we've covered a lot on emerging tech startups, emerging tech technologies. We haven't talked about your steel pan band.
Yeah, that's the that is the interesting one. So
last time you were here, I know you were really busy with doing all these different startups and working with the tech companies. But I guess the one thing that we can't forget in business is that you have to have something that you love, something you can do and grow as a person outside of your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's called Steel Bandits.
Yeah, that's the band.
Is that right?
Steel Bandits is the band. Yeah, I've been with them for 20 years.
And the crazy part is that, as we talked about it earlier, having such an interesting hobby that's so different from everything else that you do has been actually kind of a door opener in a lot of ways. So let's talk a little bit about that.
I would have never imagined a million years the amount of rooms that I've gotten in from Steel Pan. Like the amount of executives, like kings I've met with Steel Pan. I'll give you an example. There's a company called CyberX. They're a cybersecurity company. And the founder, Madi, hit me up over LinkedIn. And he said, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm like, sounds pretty cool. You're doing a cybersecurity conference for 300 director and above cybersecurity people. Sounds very interesting. How may I help? Right? I'm a headhunter. I'm always
great introduction.
Right? Well, he actually messaged me, and so we're talking now. And so what happened was he starts telling me about what's going on. And I say, hey, do you have any entertainment? I play steel drums. And he said, I think that'd be a good idea for maybe the breakfast or the lunch or for this 2-day conference in Niagara Falls with these 300 security directors and above, PwC, or you name it, right? Mayor of Ajax, list goes on and on. Very powerful room. And so now I'm there playing Steel Pan. And a week before the event, he says, I know you've been able to shoot documentaries and episodes. Could you shoot a documentary here? I'm like, sure.
Ooh,
sure I can.
Nice.
Sure I can. Right? I'll do it. And he tells me what he's looking for. And we shoot the documentary after I'm done playing Steel Pan. So I play Steel Pan for breakfast, and then I walk over, and I go to the cameras, and be like, all right, Paul, all right, Brandon, you got the cameras, and we're trying to fix the lighting, because Niagara Falls is in the background. It's crazy. And we shoot this documentary, and all of a sudden, it starts trending on LinkedIn. And it's like, nobody's looking at my Steel Pan video, but they're all looking at the documentary I created. And I'm realizing that music is kind of the white hat Trojan horse. It's the white hat Trojan horse. Because who wants to talk about cybersecurity? Right?
I mean, listen.
Who wants to talk about, respectfully, who wants to talk about mortgage rates?
I'm going to plain out, say this right now. I have benefited from hobbies translating into business. And the thing that's natural and that's normal, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I think it is such a powerful tool. I don't think people use it and utilize it enough. And it's such a great outlet because you don't need to talk about business with people that like the same hobbies. But people who like the same hobbies and people who listen to types of music that you want to play and types of places you want to be, very often they will just keep in touch. And very often they will have things you could do together. And very, very often they can be very beneficial for everybody.
Now, CyberX went from that one event to doing 5 events.
Boom.
Right? March 10th, 2020, Canadian Women in Cybersecurity. Sponsored by the largest IT organizations in the world. 500 women, Weston Harbor Castle downtown. We do the same thing.
Amazing.
But that all came from what?
A message on LinkedIn.
Steel pan.
Yeah.
And a message on LinkedIn. How did I end up playing for a Nigerian royalty? I got a call 12:30 one night saying, hey, I can't do a gig. Can you do it for me? I'm like, sure, Mark. Where? It's for a Nigerian king. I'm like, but it's 12:30 at night, so I'm just like, what time? Right? Where is it? And I go there. Have you ever driven into like a fancy house where you have to drive at least 2 minutes just to see the house?
the front yard, I guess, is long enough.
And have you ever driven to the house and there's only one lane for a car? And you're like, what is at the end of this road? Or did I just get set up? Right? And I wasn't set up, luckily. And there's this huge house. And I'm playing steel pan for a Nigerian businessman. And he's like, where did you learn that Nigerian song? I'm like, YouTube. He's like, that came out 2 days ago. It was a song by Tamaya called I Can't Kill Myself. Right?
So you just learned it the day before?
Because I'm just listening to the music. I'm a music fan.
Right on.
Similar hobbies.
Yeah.
He's an accountant who builds 300,000 low to middle income suburban homes in Nigeria. I'm a steel pan player in Toronto. What do we like? Tamaya, I Can't Kill Myself.
Right
you know
on.
how I was racking my brain to say, am I really going to play I Can't Kill Myself at a corporate event? Well, I'm thinking, well, the guy's popular. He's from Nigeria. I should play some, I'm playing Nigerian music. And all of a sudden, I go from playing outside the room to the royalty calling me inside the room.
Amazing.
And he's decked out as he's decked out with the scepter and everything. Very intelligent guy, right? And I got there through steel pan, and he invites me to play the next day. And who's there the next day? The mayor of Brampton, right?
You never know.
And I'm playing. They're having dinner over here, and I'm playing over here. And he's telling me, play louder. I'm like, play louder. I'm trying to listen. Right? I don't want to interrupt the dinner. But he's saying, play louder. And it turns out that connection has led to other connections. In Ghana, in Kenya, in Nigeria, in South Africa.
Amazing.
Through steel pan, through music. I went to U of T because I thought steel pan wasn't enough. Right?
But it's a combination of things, right? Like, I mean, again, it just speaks to me a lot as well because of my jiu-jitsu and sport being really a gateway for a lot of things for me. But I think, again, if you're any kind of business, any kind of entrepreneur, you should have a hobby that you really are passionate about, because you'll be surprised how far that hobby will take you in business, because people will eventually find out what you do, and if you're really good, they will use you.
One of the best people I ever met in sales, his name is Daniel Perillo. He owns a financial advising brokerage. He said that he repeated a phrase to me, which is touch the heart before you touch the hand.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what he was talking about 10, 15 years ago. I was like, what are you talking about? You have to show them the rate. The rate is everything. And he's like, touch the heart before you touch the hand. I don't know. And I didn't know what he was talking about. I know what he's talking about now.
I hear you.
We often like to think that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. It is not. Right? When I'm teaching kids at Jane and Finch, I say, what song you guys want to learn today? They call out the song and I start playing it.
Right on.
Game over. Right? I don't have to teach them theory and Pythagorean blah, blah, blahs. And now I will.
Get them passionate.
I will. But what is the sequence of relationship building? It's discovery. It's the romance, right? And, Oren Clough, Pitch Anything, who wrote the masterclass book on pitching, he said that we have a crocodile brain connected to our limbic system. And this crocodile brain is telling you whether to engage with this other person, whether it's safe, whether this person's going to rob you, steal your newborn. And if they're not able to get past this crocodile brain, good luck with your interest rate, because they won't trust you. Because we make decisions for invisible reasons.
That's right.
For very primal reasons.
Sometimes it just doesn't feel right. Your gut feeling is telling you otherwise, right?
And oftentimes we go against our gut because there's money there. And then we find out later that,
The only,
God, you were right.
the only way you can get that gut feeling that the butterflies in the stomach is by touching the heart. That's really what it comes down to.
And it's different every time. It is different. Every individual is
Personal approach.
Like,
Personal
I used to
approach.
think about archetypes as, no. This is an individual within their own first, middle, and last name. And I am going to bring in as little preconceived notions as possible, because what the learner learns, this is a callback divergence. What the learner learns is a function of what they already know. So I need to discover what they already know to couch my message in their language.
Right on.
It took me a lifetime to wrap my head around it, and I'm still just in the beginning of it, but I can see it transforming my relationships with people and how my business is evolving.
That's amazing. Listen, I think we have run quite close to the end of the show here. We're on time. There is a lot of things we covered today. I hope you guys took a lot out of the headhunting experience, the building different tech companies, and ultimately, the one thing I really wanted to stress is the importance of hobbies in introducing new relationships,
Yes.
in building character, right? Because it's by persevering in your hobby, you also just simply get better at staying on track and staying on course.
It's your joy. You're discovering and living your joy when you do it.
That's right.
And I mean, why are we doing all this other stuff? You know, above all else, learn how to discover joy. That's Seneca from 2,500 years ago. That's not changed. If I look at the times of my life when I've not been as happy, it's when I've forgotten what my joy actually is.
That's right.
And when I return to it, I'm now closing that circular loop faster and faster. So I play steel pan every day. You do jiu-jitsu on a regular basis.
That's it, man.
Because it's food for the soul in a way that we couldn't even understand.
Thank you for that. That is it for our main show, guys. This was Michael Jagdeo of Unicorn Launching. Make sure you look him up at Unicorn Launching. You are on Twitter. You are on Instagram.
Unicornlaunching.com.
Unicornlaunching.com.
Yeah.
Check him out. Add him on LinkedIn. He's pretty approachable. Message Michael if you're interested to learn more about headhunting or these different tech startups. He is, again, very, very knowledgeable about these things. And if you're looking for a steel band,
I'm your man. I'm your man.
He's the man as well. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was your host, Konstantin Polyakov, and we will see you on the next episode of PRsonalities.